Hi, is it working? Who's there that can let me know? It says live. This is my first time doing one of these. I'm just gonna assume I'm good to go. I'll wait till I hear from somebody. I got what? Oh, good. Good. Okay. So at 5:30, for whoever's there, I plan on doing a little bow in and whatnot. But in the meantime, my plan for today is going to be information heavy. I just want to go up the basic forms. So basic 1, 2, 3, the penons, maybe the black belt forms, depending on if we get to it in time, but I'll do it almost as if I'm correcting myself. So I'll do a move, say a front stance in basic 1, bam. And then I'll judge myself. I'll say, is my back leg straight? Why is it straight? And it's all about these questions of why do we do any stance? Why is a front stance the way it is? Why is a back stance the way it is? Where's our source of power? If you've taken one of my classes, you kind of know what to expect. But I think if it's me talking the whole time, it will be a little information heavy. A few things that I know about myself. I talk very fast and I talk a lot. If I'm talking too much or skipping over a point, let me know. If you have any specific questions, you can do that too. Yeah. Thanks, MJ. It's kind of better, but I want to lower it a little bit more. There we go. Now I don't have to stand so far back to do a stance. Okay. Does anybody have anything specific in terms of forms? Because I do plan on looking at forms and techniques today, but anything specific in terms of forms that you'd want to look at? I do just plan on starting on basic 1 and working my way up, but if there's something that anybody wants specific attention tailored towards, I'm happy to do that too. Otherwise, I'll give it at least until 5:30 to start, just in case. Just in case. Why? The good news is I've never had a problem talking a lot for a long time, so that should be okay. This reminds me, not to get too rambling, but about 2 years ago, I had for those of you who don't know, knee surgery, and I was sitting in a chair teaching my classes for the longest time, and I had to learn something. I always teach by showing, but I had to kind of understand things verbally with explaining them instead of doing or being able to teach by showing. So hopefully will come in handy. Hey, Bertrand. Hey, Vivian. I voted too, by the way. I saw your Facebook post. Okay. I think you meant vouch and not Vogue, although it is me, so it could be Vogue. 29 and 15 seconds. Not sure what the delay is like for you guys. Although I am glad to do this. I was going a little stir crazy at home, just playing video games, something that I don't do that much. I went from having no time to all the time in the world. But now we're ready. Good. When we do reach 5:30, if you'll indulge me, I don't know how MJ has been doing it. I haven't seen any of his streams, but I do want to bow in at least. I'll bow in and I'll assume that you guys, yes, I'll assume that you guys are bowing in with me. So stand if you want to, don't if you don't. Goes together, toes apart. A little informal. I'm in a t-shirt, but it is a Master Life t-shirt, so we'll be semi-formal. Let's call it that. At attention. Good. 3 seconds for the security cam. Okay, that's not too much. So, like I said, I do want to start with basic one and understanding the components first, and we'll look at what's new, and then we'll tie it all together. So, basic one, let's say this is my first time doing a form. What's new? Down blocks, middle punches, front stance. And I want to start with the stance, and we're always going to start with the new stances in a form because it's kind of what you build off of, and I'll tell you what I mean in a second. When you're in a front stance, if I ask a rhetorical question, by the way, you don't need to answer. This is just kind of how I talk things out. Where is my power going? It's going forward. It seems obvious because it's a front stance, but sometimes it's not. For example, if you ask which leg is doing more work, that's tricky because my front leg is the one that's bent and has all of my weight on it. Yes, but my back leg is the one that is involved in pushing me forward. And I shouldn't have my hips rotated. Right now, you can see my belly facing you, even though my stance is going sideways. My belly should be going sideways as well. And the reason is my back leg hip is pushing, so my shoulders and hips are square. And all of that happens because I'm pushing from my back leg. So this leg is bent, now it pushes, now my hip moves square. So a front stance is designed to have me going powerful forward, specifically in the direction that my stance is leaning towards. So whenever you do a front stance, hopefully, we don't just plop into it and then land in a position that looks like a front stance. But hopefully we push into it, and I don't just go up and down and land in a position that looks like a front stance-ish. But then instead I kind of come in and from there with the back leg, push out. Good. We've established front stance. We don't have to talk about front stances anymore. If you guys are good at taking mental notes, take mental notes. If you want to take physical notes, take physical notes. I only say that because I realize how much I talk. And most of you guys, if it's like Miguel, if it's like the Donos, you're not new. You can probably keep the information in your head, but if you feel like there's a lot and you want to keep track of something, it might be good to write some stuff down. I am visual. I like to write things down. I like to have notes that I can look at. Even if I never look at it again, just the action of writing it down helps me remember. Good. Component 2. Component 1 was the front stance. Component 2, the new thing, is the down block. So what's happening with the down block, you see them taught in WTF schools or WT schools nowadays by putting the hand to the shoulder, making sure that it's rotated, and then crossing the belly into your down block. If I'm doing a front stance forward, the ending position of my hand is just above my leg. You don't want it to go too far, and now I'm reaching away from me. You want it to stop here. And if I have permission to blow everyone's minds for a second, remember that the block we do in a form is not the block. What I mean by that, because that saying doesn't really mean anything, right? The block is not the block. What I mean is that if I'm doing a down block, this is just what it looks like when a down block is done. A down block actually happens here, where something is punching or kicking or otherwise striking towards me on the middle line, and my hand knocks it aside and then finishes here, right? So if I'm doing a high block and somebody's high punching me towards my nose, then as the block goes up, it knocks something away. Or as something is coming down, it gets knocked away. This is the position that happens after the move is done. That's true for a block, that's true for a strike. I mean, because of course, all strikes are blocks and all blocks are strikes. So a down block needs to cross in front. Now, the other hand, in general, for most basic moves, we know that it's at our hip, but it starts forward, pulls all the way back. It's doing its own strike. Yes. It's doing its same, what was I saying? I got to check it. The backhand, right? It's doing its own move. So this is an elbow strike. I like to leave it actually a little higher than the belt line, but most people like to do it in this school on the belt line. Either is fine as long as you know what you're doing. But what's happening is you're pulling back and striking at the same time. And the reason is you want to pull with both hands for whatever move you're doing, be it a down block, high block, middle punch, whatever. You're getting power from your whole body. I always teach it like this. I always say if you're standing with your hands at your hips, and you put one hand forward, act like you pull the bow and arrow back. Well, when you're here in this chamber position for a punch, for example, when you pull this hand back, notice how my shoulders turn to where the right shoulder, this shoulder anyway, was in the back, and now it's forward. When I pull to do the strike, my body turned, and I can relax after, back to neutral. The same is true, even if it's smaller, when you do it fast or advanced or with a small hip rotation. You don't need to very dramatically turn your shoulders like this, doing punches or down blocks or anything like that. What you do want to do is have the hips turning the torso, the trunk of your body, right? And when that turns, that's integrating, that's making happen together your body and the move. Good, good, good. So down blocks come across from down, and at the same time, the other hand is going to my elbow, or the other elbow is striking back, doing an elbow strike. You know what I mean? Read my mind. Good. A punch, we kind of touched on a second ago. This front hand is pulling back, but the middle punch in basic one goes down to the core. In general, you need to go lower than you think you're going to, because most people just do the punch straight. And that's fine if you want to hit something steady, strong, and stern, like the sternum or the breastbone, your pecs, big muscles here. But in general, we want to go down towards the middle. So if I'm looking at myself right on the center line, the punch is right here. And an easy way to measure that is to think down. If you're looking down your arm, you're in good business. If you see it going very straight, you might be a little too high. It is to the middle, both up and down and side to side, right on the solar plexus, right beneath the rib cage. Hi, Julia. Okay, okay. So basic one. I'll go through it now, and then we'll add other stuff as we get to it. Should be good, 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 good. Now, the first thing we do in any form is we always look where we're going. And that's because a form's purpose is sort of to help you visualize, to help you practice. I mean, look, there's almost infinite purposes to what you could do with a form because it's your own form of practice, right? But a form's purpose as a practicing tool is to help you master martial arts concepts. In this case, pushing with your body, integrating your movement with your step, which is a big one, right? If you are white, yellow, orange belt, et cetera, and you're kind of new to martial arts, then when you're doing a form, your whole purpose should be, okay, let me look at the mechanics. Am I actually bending my front knee? Is my hand at the hip? Is the down block where it's supposed to be? And that's fine. But that's what you're practicing with a form, right? You're practicing the basic mechanical structure, making sure everything is in its place. As you get more advanced, your green, purples, blues, you are now using a form not to practice these basic moves, which in theory we already know. You already know a horse stance now. Your lesson then is what can you do with a horse stance, right? The form is now a tool that you can use to practice twisting, pow, where you use your body's rotation and integrate the moves together, making them happen together, right? White, yellow, orange, use a form to practice structure. Green, purple, blue, use the form to practice concepts like twisting, like rotation, like looking where you're going, etc. The 3 levels of red, you use the same forms, it could be basic one, to practice your visualization, your intensity, your intentionality, what you're trying to do. But you see how the form could be the same form, and it depends on how you use it? Good, 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 good. So basic one, I'll try to keep it as kind of marrying together of all these concepts as I can, right? Because like I said, the structure, there's rotational stuff, there's psychological stuff, and we don't got all day. So we'll keep it mostly into the structure and rotational stuff today. Good, good, good. We talked about the structure in terms of a stance. Now, when I go to do the down block, I look where I'm going first. That's just to line my body up. It's not even, it's a lot. It is psychological, but it's also mechanical because when you turn your eyes, then you're more likely to step into a correct front stance. Right? So if I'm looking out of the side of my eye, I'm less likely to turn my body enough. So I look where I'm going, I chamber where I'm going, I push the back leg into a front stance, I'm in a down block, my hand is at my hip all the way back. The key here is that, and we know this, right? We're not, and if we don't, that's okay, but I don't just kind of turn into the first move of basic one. Instead, I let the chamber happen. As I'm looking, I'm breathing in, I'm chambering. It's kind of getting ready. I push with the back leg, exhale and strike. The exhale is important for anything above kind of purple belt level, blue belt level, because when you start doing moves more powerful with intensity, your breathing is a great tool to make sure that you're doing work. When I say work, I mean like if you're doing a push-up, you breathe out as you push up because you're exerting force, right? When you're doing a move in martial arts, you should also be exerting force. And so that's why you should exhale. Okay, so you do your down block, you pull. Now notice how I'm not just kind of standing here, keeping my shoulders square and punching. What I'm doing is before I move on to the next move, I inhale, and that inhale is me chambering. It's me pulling this hand back so that I can be prepared. As I inhale, my back leg comes forward. And then I exhale and strike. Hopefully staying on the line. Good. With a form like basic one, we don't need to go through the whole thing to get the concepts, maybe just the first 4 or 8 moves. But look at how I kind of marry these ideas together of how I'm pushing forward with a front stance, chambering from the shoulder, palm rotated, chambering from the center, looking, all of these things. 2, good. Before I go to move number 3, this is a big one in terms of basic one, and before I move on to the third move of basic one, which is a kind of an important one, I want to mention something about the direction that you chamber in. The direction that you chamber in is important because it determines your power for both moves, right? So if I'm going to do a down block, my hand is here, I turn this way, and the down block is strong. That just kind of makes sense, right? That's why when I do move number 3 and I chamber, I have to turn this way to make the down block strong. I don't turn the other way. It kind of goes kind of against what makes sense for power with this hand. You could do it, but it's not going to be the most powerful direction to turn. Turning with it is going to be more powerful, right? Well, the same thing is true for your second hand. And that's kind of what the point is that I'm getting towards. If I do a regular down block facing forward, this hand is straight here and it chambers, pow, straight back. And it's a very powerful elbow strike backwards. Right. So if I'm facing this way and my hand is forward and I pull back, pop, I had a very powerful elbow strike in this direction, right? Well, if I'm facing forward and my hand is forward and I'm going to turn and do the first move of basic one, well, now this move didn't have any power in the elbow strike. The elbow strike went kerplop and went straight to my hip without any power. So instead, when I do the first move of basic one, and I was doing this, but I didn't mention it, I look, pull my hand this way, the opposite of the direction that I'm going to strike into, because I want to elbow strike this way when I do the form. So I don't start with my hands like this. I have to start this way so that I can strike. What this means is that after move number 2, when I go to do my third move that way, I can't start chambering here. If I do, I'll have a perfectly powerful down block, and my hand at the hip had no chamber power. It went straight there, almost like I'm trying to inside block my hip, which is something, but it's not what we're going for. Basic 4. If I said that, you know what I mean. So from a middle punch, instead, before I go to move 3, I chamber in the direction I'm going to. That doesn't mean I have to turn my belly button all the way there. I still want a good down block chamber. I can leave my belly button chambered. I just reach as much as I can in this direction so that I get a good, powerful strike in this direction. 4. Same thing going down the middle. As I chamber, I pull this elbowing hand forward. That way when I turn, pow, I get a powerful elbow strike back here. Good, 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 good. That's all I kind of want to mention for basic one right now, because as we go up and up and up, those concepts will repeat themselves. No need to beat a dead horse. Good, good, good. So basic two, what's new? Two things, your high punches and your high blocks, right? Yes, 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 yes. Your high punches and your high blocks. For a high punch, there's only one thing that I really want to mention, and that is when you do a high punch, make sure, when you do any punch, but especially a high punch, make sure your shoulders don't rise up. So for example, you see all this great poofy hair that I have here? If my shoulders are touching my hair, we have a problem, right? Because what it means is that my power is up high. And this isn't a problem if I'm reaching up for the top shelf somewhere and I'm trying to pull something down, then great, my shoulders should be up. But if I want to do a punch and absorb impact, absorb power on my shoulders should be down. That way I'm not using arm power to strike, I'm using body power to strike, right? Okay, so in that regard, when I do a high punch, it's dangerous because I'm reaching upwards. And it's a little easier to kind of rise up in the shoulders while you reach up and aim for the nose. So just a tendency, make sure to keep that down. High blocks are the other new move, and the way that I always teach this is I always tell my kiddos, act like you're unbuckling a seatbelt, pow, and then go up and block. Unbuckle a seatbelt, and pow. But what I mean by that is to reach across the body, right? The way that I interpret a high block is two components. One, the arm, and two, the body, right? That isn't the only interpretation, but it's the way that I choose to do it and teach it and understand it. So for example, if I'm standing stationary and my body is facing forward and I reach across, unbuckling the seatbelt, and I high block, pow, that's just kind of half of it, but it almost looked like my arm went straight up and didn't move in a good circle, right? We always talk about a high block rotating this way and going in and out. I kind of do that and I kind of don't. Here's what I mean. Instead of doing all the rotation on my shoulder, because I kind of have bad shoulders, I don't like to do this big loop. It doesn't feel powerful to me. Instead, I reach across and almost go straight up, pow, like a hammer fist. But I still want this direction to happen. And so what I do is I turn my body this way, and as my arm is going straight up, my body turns, pow, and does the job that some people do with their shoulder and rotator cuff, right? So instead of down the middle of basic two, me stepping and doing this, pow, and doing a big circle with my shoulders, I don't do that, but it might look that way because what I do is I reach across, turn my body is facing the mirrors over there now. That's maybe an exaggeration, but it is, right? And from there, as I put my arm straight up relative to me, my torso turns back 90 degrees, and now I get this direction on the side. Okay, good. Some people do, some people don't, right? I don't know what some people do specifically, or maybe I do, but I'm not going to call anybody out. But all I can do is say what I've seen sometimes and try to kind of explain what it is. And maybe even I'm just explaining what it is by explaining what it isn't. Well, for example, I'm explaining that a high block isn't a big shoulder rotation. It is a whole body rotation. I'm not calling anybody out. Unless I'm calling out myself, of course. I'm more just trying to use language to describe it in a way, and hopefully by saying what it isn't, that helps you all understand what it is. Hey, knots. And it sounded like I was saying, hey, not, but no, I just meant not family. High block plus high block, basic two high blocks. Yeah, so for basic two, to kind of tie it all together, right? I'm in my chumi. I look the direction I'm going, I chamber in the direction I'm going, I rotate for a down block, I pull, I breathe, I move in with body rotation. As I'm doing a high block to the nose, it's still in the center, but my shoulders aren't high. I chamber in the direction, even for the second hand, right? Nice and low, above the knee. I pull, go to the knee. I chamber in the direction that I'm going to. And for the high blocks, it's not belly button forward the whole time. We just kind of talked about that, but let's do it kind of fast motion. I don't just step forward, 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 because what I did was I kind of only used my arms and I'm trying to muscle through it. Instead, my body turns, wham, my body turns, wham, my body turns, pow, into this front stance, into this high block. As a high block, make sure that your arm is kind of rotated as if you're doing a chop upwards and not a high five upwards, right? I don't just, my uniform, yes. I don't just want my hand to be blocking. There's a kind of a rule in martial arts, especially combat martial arts, where you never want the back of your hand, kind of like how we do a back fist, or the inside of your arm where all the veins are. You don't want to be using those to do anything powerful. Specifically, this is a rule for knife fighting, right? So we do a back fist in Taekwondo and that's fine, but it's kind of a tender part where if the back of your hand gets hit with something hard like a knife or even a stick, that would hurt a lot. Or if the inside of your forearm were to get hit, you could bruise the veins and things like that. Instead, you want the edge of your forearm where the bone is, right? Or the edge of your hand, or the inside of your palm, not the back, but the inside, right? Or the back of your arm. Yes, pardon me. The back of your arm should be doing a move that's powerful, right? Or the side. Well, in this case, for a high block, I'm using the side as if I'm doing a knife-handed chop or a hammer fist, but a chop I think is easier to understand. Pow. One of my favorite tips was to like make your hand look like a telescope, look through the hole in your hand, and then close it. Don't rotate it, leave it closed, but from there, lift it up. Because now I'm angled as a block and not kind of rotated forward to block with the inside of my arm. Think about it this way. If you were going to break a ruler, like a ruler used to measure things, I say that word weird. Anyway, and you were to bend it against the flat side, right? It would snap very easy. If you turned it sideways and tried to bend it against the thin side, it is much harder to break. Yeah, it's much harder to break when you bend a ruler this way than when you bend it this way. It's just because there's more mass in this direction that you're trying to turn against, right? It's not that it's more massive overall, it's in that direction. The same thing with your high block. It's not that you have two bones in your arms, right? You don't want to block with them flat. You want to block with them lined up to make them more powerful for a strike, more powerful for deflection. Good, 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 good. So basic 1, basic 2, in the back. Basic 3. Oh, I talk about it. Basic 3. There are a couple new things, but I want to start with the 2 new stances. And I'll spend kind of more time talking about the stances even than we'll do going through new forms because this is so fundamental. Yeah. Good, good, good. Oh, good. I'm glad that we're getting kind of an, because look, when you're practicing a form and if you're confused about what something is or you don't know what it is, it's hard to do it well, right? If you're going to put power into a move, right, but you don't know what the move is, that's how maybe you hurt yourself or somebody else. I remember once I was doing Pion 5, one of the red belt forms, and you don't need to know it. All you need to know is that it goes outside block, middle punch as the first move in a back stance. And I went and kind of didn't chamber correctly for this outside block, bam, and punch myself across the face, right? And yeah, that happens. It happens to some people. It happens to all of us. But if you know that when you do this outside block, this hand should come all the way to a full chamber, and then from there, extend into a punch and not come up and down in some kind of knot punch, but you really understand what the direction is that it's coming from, you're less likely to make a mistake like that. Sounds like you, it was actually me. So anyway, basic 3, before I get too off topic. Back stance. Back stance, back stance, back stance. For this, I have to backtrack, see what I did there, into kind of what a front stance is to explain what a back stance is. Again, I'll say again, if I ask rhetorical questions, they're rhetorical, you don't need to answer directly. You don't have to answer them directly. I'm kind of just asking questions to myself so I can hopefully better explain to you. Now, a front stance, as we've talked about, is pushing with the back leg, but the front leg has more weight on it. We kind of made the distinction in the beginning of the class, right? So I have more weight on the front leg, but the back leg was the one that did the work and pushed me, right? The back leg was the one that projected me forward, and now I'm to the front, and now I'm braced with this back leg against moving backwards, and that gives me more power to strike forwards, right? And as I do that in conjunction with a forward move, then now it's not just the power of a punch, pow, but it's the power of the punch plus this leg pushing me forward. The reason why I explain that is because it's kind of important for understanding what a back stance isn't. A back stance is not a front stance. Sounds obvious, but what I mean by that is that it is not pushing your power in a straight line at all. Not at all. So in a front stance, right, you're pushing from back to forward. We'll talk about a horse stance later in a second, but it's pushing your power directly to the side. But the point is, both of those stances are moving in a straight line, whatever the direction that is, to the side or to the front. The stance is pushing them laterally in a straight line. But a back stance doesn't do that. It doesn't. What it does, and the reason why the back leg is bent, is because it's a rotational stance, right? If you're going to, I'll grab a stick for a second. If you're going to rotate something and you rotate it very big, it can't spin as fast or as smooth. I have it very wide, but the smaller you make it, the more it spins. If I wanted to, and it's kind of hard to tell, but if I spin it around back and forth like this, like I'm rolling something in my hands, it's much easier. If it's smaller, and if it's bigger, and I get something huge and roll it around, let's do that. If I get something huge and roll it around, my hands don't move as fast because they're moving in a big circle, right? Whereas if I grab something very small and roll it between my hands, they move much faster. It's because things move faster as they get closer to the center of a circle, right? That's your centripetal force. So when you do back stance, the same thing is true. If I'm in the middle, like a horse stance, and I rotate, I'm not going to rotate as fast as I would if my weight is more over one leg. Now I can pivot on a dime on one point, more to one point, and that gives me more power and more speed. And I said that backwards. It gives me more speed, but gives me more power for any rotational moves. Pow, right? I took the bag out. Whatever. Okay, so the way that I do a back stance, admittedly, isn't the way that most people in this school do a back stance. I do almost a Shotokan karate back stance. I very much exaggerate. If you look at my feet and say they're on the edge of the black line, I lean back, look at how my hips are over this line intersection. That's very, very, very dramatic for a Taekwondo back stance. You more see a 60% of the weight on the back leg, 40% on the front leg in common Taekwondo. I do almost 70-30, 75-25, and I don't put my feet as wide. And the reason why, you just call me Daniel. The reason why I put so much weight on the back leg is because I really, really, really want to have a tight rotational point. You don't need to do it that much. You can be mostly to the back. But what is unacceptable, and I hate to put such a hard line out there, what is unacceptable is to put more effort into going forward in a back stance than you do into rotating into a back stance. Now look at the difference again. Instead of pushing into both knees bent, you need to stay back and go more this way. Look at the shoulders. And go more rotate into a back stance. If you stay over one leg all the way to the back, kind of like how I did, you think I am Daniel? Do you know Daniel? The reason why I choose to stay so far on my back leg is that it gives me even more rotational power. But by all means, if you want to kind of shift it and do 60-40, that's fine too. But then now here's the key. We talk about a back stance. What it is it is rotational. It gives you power for your open hand middle blocks, for your basic threes, right? And you are getting a tight pow twist like that, like you're snapping into the back leg from the hips. Look at the belt. One direction, pow, to the other. Your body is facing sideways. Your toes are in an L. And by the way, heels are in a straight line. I've noticed a rash of this in the dojo lately, that people do a back stance, do kind of a good back stance, but the heels aren't lined up. Let me face forward so you can see what I mean. Right now, if I put one foot here on this black line, the heel of the back foot should also be on this black line. Pow, and now my weight is balanced. I see a lot of back stances that are happening like this. You see how my foot is almost in the middle of the black line? This is not a correct back stance. For a back stance to be proper in terms of like what we've defined as it should be, the heels specifically should be in line. So that means the heel of the back leg and the entirety of the front foot should be on the straight line, on the same line, right? Good, good, good. That's just something that I think should happen more in general. It just kind of takes practice for the rotate thingy, right? What might help is instead of thinking about so much doing a move, think, you know how you do a wave? I don't know if you guys have ever done a wave from the shoulders where you start with one arm and then you go through to the other arm. Something very key about a wave is that it goes step by step, which is something that I think gets skipped when people try to integrate complex rotational movements into their forms, right? So the wave, for a second, don't lose me. I know it looks funny, but don't lose me. The wave starts with one hand, and before it moves on to the next one, or even the shoulder doesn't move yet. It goes arm, elbow, the elbow moves the shoulder moves the other shoulder moves the other elbow. I don't go caca, that's clunky. It's one to the other. The same is true for your movements, right? It should be the back leg turns the hips turn the torso turns the shoulders turn the elbows turn the arms, right? It's very easy to kind of do that and then move the hands, and now it's kind of disintegrated, right? It's not all happening together. Well, yeah, practice makes better. Practice makes permanent, right? As Master Michelle likes to say. Practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes better, practice makes permanent. Practice consciously, looking at yourself, observing, and you improve. Good, 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 good. So for the rotation, just kind of do it slowly and make sure that it's happening pow, like a wave. Eventually you can speed it up. Eventually you want the move with your hands and the stance to land at the same time, pow, right? But even if they're not, even if you're going like this, 1, 2, and landing a second after with your hands because you're doing the hands slowly, that's fine to start to learn how to integrate it in a wave. Then eventually, when you get more comfortable doing the move, you speed up the hand movements twice as fast as the hands, as the feet. The hands should be twice as fast as the feet. And it all happens together. Good, 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 good. So that's your back stance. And again, the reason why I'm spending so much time on a back stance and a horse stance is because, 1, 2, 3, 4, they have back stances and horse stances in them. And I don't need to do a deep dive on a back stance in P1 if we did a deep dive on a back stance in basic 30. We'll take more time on the basics, actually, probably, than we will on green, purple, blue forms, whatever, because the stuff in a basic form is so fundamental that it is included in all the other forms. If we're looking at like a down block hammerfish in P1, that can just get a one explanation and then go on. Good, good, good. I just want to do all forms now. Well, that's kind of the idea, right? But I just want to make sure that we don't just jump into forms. This format that we're doing isn't just to watch me do a form, because I can't watch you do a form. It's hopefully just a way for you to get a lot of information that you can use to practice yourself, right? When I'm not there, when this video is not going on, and you're at home doing whatever you're doing, there's no reason why you can't practice your own form over and over again. You can practice your form 10 times if you want to, 50 times if you want to. I feel like we all kind of have the time. Yes. So the purpose of this class is for me to give as much information as possible so that when you practice yourself, you can practice as much stuff as you can. You can do all these little corrections as you can. Because, I mean, honestly, what's the point? If I just do a form and you watch it, how much can you actually pick up? It's probably too fast. And if I'm going slow enough to explain, which is what I'm doing, well, that's what I'm doing. Good, 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 good. Horse stance. I think we're good with back stance. We can keep moving on. A horse stance kind of makes sense already. It's one of the easiest stances there is, so they thought. But if you look at how wide my legs are, if you look at how wide my legs are, they're on both intersections of a mat. But that's only because of how tall I am and how long my legs are. For most of you, your stance shouldn't be this wide, and the reason is this. When you do a horse stance, you don't want your knees buckled in. That means that if you make a straight line from your knee to the floor, if I grab a stick to kind of demo that, your foot should be directly under. If you make a straight line to the floor from your knee and your foot isn't there, your stance is too wide or your knees aren't wide enough. In this case, I can make my stance better by pushing my knees out to the side, and now directly under my knee is my foot. This protects your knees from getting pushed down in from the side. Yeah. This protects your knees from getting pushed out. It gives you more weight. If you're going to lift something heavy on your shoulders, you want your knees under you. It's like when you do a squat. So you don't want your knees in, and you want your toes facing the same direction as your feet. Now, there are some schools of martial arts, some karates, some kung fu's, where they actually do a horse stance with the feet like a V, and the knees are also out like a V. And that is just another way you could do a horse stance, but not the way we do it here. When you do a horse stance here, you want to make sure that your toes are completely square forward, your knees are completely above your toes, and this is important, your back is straight. Go eat. When I say back is straight, here's what I mean. If I'm standing sideways and I kind of curl my upper back, now my back isn't straight. If I curve my middle back, now my back isn't straight. If I curve my lower back, my back isn't straight. So ways that I can correct that, when I do a stance, the tendency is kind of to shift forward. Make sure that your back isn't a slope by extending from the back of the neck. Don't put your chin down, but instead kind of feel like the back of your head is very tall. Don't puff your chest out, but instead feel like the back of your spine is very tall, right? Because good posture doesn't mean leaning back. Because look, now my back is curved in extension, leaning backwards. We don't want bending forward. We don't want bending backwards. We want neutral, that place in the middle for a horse stance, back stance, and front stance. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So, basic 3. That's for me. I look the direction that I'm going. Now, I chamber with the back hand where it should be. I rotate on the back leg. This hand should be all the way back so that, look, you can't see my elbow on the camera, which you shouldn't. It's pulled all the way back, hand doing a good block. The block, for an outside block, if you look in this direction, doesn't stop in front of my face. Remember what I said about a down block. The block is not the block. This is the position of when it's done. Here's the strike. The down block pushes it away from you. The same is true for an outside block. An attack is coming forward. You don't stop here. This is where the strike is coming in. We're not trying to block a punch with the middle of your arm. You're trying to knock the punch or kick or whatever aside. So in that respect, it moves past your face. Here's my head. Here's the block when it's done. Right? It's moving beyond. Look at how my elbow is not invisible, but it's visible because I'm standing sideways now, right? It moved all the way back. I don't puff out my chest. I keep the ribs long. I go all the way back, right? Pop, pop, pop. Knees bend, weight to the back leg, rotate. Good. 2 is the front stance punch that we know. I look, chamber in the direction that I'm going. Look how the weight stays on the back leg. Did I go from 2 and curl plop on the front leg way over here with my belly button over this line? I did not. From here, I kept my body on the back leg, and I'm over this line. I stayed back where I was on a back stance, and I do my move and I front stance. Good. As I go down the middle for a horse stance, I do a down block, I chamber, and horse stance. Now the way that you put your foot into that, let me show you forward, is not a big, wide, circling step. If I stand on this line with my left foot, I think that looks like the right foot to you because we're in reverse. If I move my foot in a big circle around like this, hopefully I get it in line, but maybe I don't. You see how they're kind of not on the same line? The way that you do a horse stance in motion, the way that you do a horse stance in motion is to pull it in, rotate, and move it straight out to the side, pow, 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 with the rotation pow, of your body. So it's not just standing in the middle and going side to side. It's turning as you go side to side. See? So I end up in the middle. I end up feet in a horse stance, toes straight, knees above the feet. Pow! Straight out. Behind, straight out, behind, straight out. I say that, yeah, like a crab, like a Zoidberg from Futurama. Wah, 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 wah. Different than if you moved it in a big circle like this. Here's what we don't want to do. You don't want to move around like this, like you're singing Old Town Road and walking like a cowboy, right? You don't want to have your hands on the belt, moving in a big circle with the knees bent. Instead, you pull it in, rotate straight out, in, rotate straight out. It goes directly side to side. Yeah, whatever works for an analogy, as long as we understand that that's the way it's not. It is like a crab, it's not like a cowboy. Yeah. Good. Good. I think that's enough for basic 3. We don't actually have to go through the form. You can go through the form on your own. Let's move on to Pinon 1. What's new from this form? The down block hammer fist, the down block middle block, and the back stance open hand down blocks, right? I like horses too. So for the down block hammer fist, this one's actually interesting because with the exception of like 10 people, I'm not sure anybody really knows how to chamber. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, Gangnam Style. But it doesn't move side to side. It's not. Anyway, off topic. The thing about the down block hammer fist from Pinon 1 is that the whole body has to rotate just like any other move, and most people don't do that. Either they kind of stand sideways like this without the body rotation, or they do a good down block and just rotate halfway 90 degrees backwards into the hammer fist instead of back and forward, left and right. Remember, this is in reverse, don't judge me. At least I think it's in reverse. It looks in reverse to me anyway. So, 2 things. One addendum. Make sure that and most people don't do this already. I just want to make sure that we don't start doing this with this correction. We do not want to come back and forward in the down block hammer fist. You are only moving back. However, the body rotates left to chamber the shoulder and rotates right, pow, to do the hammer fist. My hand is in a down block. 1, 2. This is without the backward step. I'm just showing you the rotation of the trunk, right? So from here, 1, 2. And it's not just the power of the arm going into a down block. It's turning, pow, pow, left, pow, pow, right, pow, pow. In this, just like when you do a hammer fist as like a white belt doing your yellow belt testing, and you learn how to 1, move in a circle, and you go this way, and you bend your elbow and your shoulder, and you drop your body, and all of these things. The same thing is true. You don't need your arms straight. You 1, bend your elbow, pow, as if from elbow striking. Turn my body, bend the elbow, extend the elbow. 1, turn the body, bend the elbow, extend the elbow. See how it all happens together? 1, 2, 3. 1, I was here in a down block. 1, 1, I can already start bending the elbow. 1, 2, like I'm doing an elbow strike. Pow. 1, 2, 1. The elbow's turning with the body. Body back, body forward, body back, body forward. And as the body finishes, the hammer fist is extending out. As I do this last step, the rotation and the extension, I'm sliding backwards. And that's where the confusion might come in, right? Because it's not here, chamber, forward. It's here, chamber, and as this last bit happens, move backwards. Pow, 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 pow. But it all happens one pow, pow, down, back, forward. Look at the belt movement. Look at how it goes. One way, pow, 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 pow. Eventually, if you can get your other hand involved, that's good too. And last notation, the angle is 45 degrees because you're hitting a collarbone. Not straight because you're probably going to miss whatever it is you're trying to strike. Yeah. So it's coming down this way. It's coming down vertical. It's not going sideways. It's not this. It's straight down, but it ends here at a 45-degree angle, right? So my arm is bent not as much as a basic 3, kind of more forward, because what you're doing is you're aiming for a collarbone. If there's somebody facing you this way, and I don't have another person to demonstrate, but if you go like this, you're going to overshoot the collarbone. You might hit back here. You might just kind of skip or skim the chest. If you're trying to hit the top of the head, great. You need to be taller. But instead, you're kind of going forward into somebody like that. Pow, like that. Pow. Because again, remember, and if you do it and end with your elbow straight, that's not a big deal or a problem. What that is an example of is ending past the movement, just like a down block, right? Here's this down block, here's a down block when it's done. Here's a hammer fist, here's a hammer fist when it's done. The reason why I don't like that for this move is because you're putting all this power onto a locked elbow joint and it's not good for your elbow. So eventually we want to make sure that we have 2 hands doing that, but with that long explanation, we're going to leave that out. For your down block, open hand, middle block, pow, pow, in this part of the form, make sure that just like any regular down block, this happens with the blocking hand on top. And just like any middle block, like basic 3, now the blocking hand goes on the bottom. Right? The key here is that you don't get confused about which hand. The key is that you don't just use the arm by itself, right? Eventually you get a good down block and then people try to boom, just do the middle block right there. Instead we want down block with body rotation, pop, and then chamber, like I'm gonna do basically, chamber into this middle chop, right? But it came from underneath and this hand went forward again so I can get a whole new elbow strike backwards for power. I get one of those, pow here, I get another one, pow, there for power. Line this up correctly. Good. Still the outside block doesn't go in front of your face. Correct, yeah, just like basic 3, how we mentioned that if you stop here, you're missing the point because this is where the strike comes in and you go past and knock it aside and this is where it's done. The same for an open hand middle block. It's not stopping here, it's passing here. I don't like to leave it angled. Some people do. I like to come all the way to here, but you'll see schools, by schools, I mean schools of thought, but also people in schools who do middle block like this, and that is fine. I don't like it, but it's acceptable. Pow, I go all the way to here because I finished, pow, and I'm doing my full strike and using my entire forearm as a guard and not letting anything slide off, right? Okay, the last 4 moves are the same in terms of chambering with the hand open. It is a down block. It is a down block. The back sends open hand down blocks. The last moves of Pion 3, this one to 45 degrees, these 4. One thing that people seem to miss is that it is a down block, right? When I do a basic 1 down block, my hand comes across, rotated inward, extends across my belly, and goes out. When I do the ending move of Pion 1, the other hand is doing something different, but this first hand should still do a down block. It's just open now, but it comes the exact same direction, right? Now, instead of this other hand being forward and pulling back, it's back and comes forward, right? If I turn my body sideways the way it is in the form, now I'm getting an inside chop. The path that the second hand takes then is the only confusing part of this movement. Since we in theory already know how to do a down block, it's just exactly the same as a close hand down block. The backhand then reaches out backwards, right? Almost like you're dabbing, whoops. And then from here, you don't just swing your arms straight across because you get no power, right? And instead there's a bend of the elbow. And look at how the back of my hand, the knuckles are against my cheek so that I have rotation into this guard position, right? Bend, bend. If you clap your hands together and act like you're holding a ball, you're holding something in your hands, and then you chamber, it's like I'm still holding it, see? And I reach back. This palm is up, down block, stop. Oh, the joke. Hey, right, there's a delay. My apologies. There's apparently like a couple second delay, so I'm seeing the comments late. The backhand is up. They both rotate simultaneously, pow, right? And this one ends completely straight, completely flat like a table. There's no bend in the wrist, up or down, it's flat. If you're looking at me from behind, I don't know that you can, but you should see my fingertips, you should see my elbow sticking out. The reason for that is because this arm is a guarded position in my center. And this is a callback to old kind of JKD, Wing Chun, other martial artsy concepts, definitely Shotokan Karate, of keeping the backhand centered and low to guard your torso, right? It is also just so you have something to do with your hands, right? But when we talk about a chamber here, this is ready for a punch. This is an elbow strike backwards. And when we talk about a chamber position here, this is a low strike. It could be a grab and a flip. It could be a lot of interpretations. It could also just be a guard position where my hand is now ready in a fighting stance, right? This is not a big transition to like a kind of neutral middle guard stance from here to here. It's just a more formalized version, like a back stance, because in here, it's more formal. Your overhand middle block is kind of your neutral stance. Your open hand down block has the same purpose of this back hand. It's very Goju Shori, another style of Taekwondo, where they keep the hands here instead of here. Good, good, good. Okay. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So, Pion 1. We do down block, we look where we're going. We do middle punch. We look, chamber the direction we're going. Full front stance, shoulder width apart, down block. Turn the body, elbow, step back. My feet are in an L shape. So they're on the same line, the heels, like a back stance. There's 1 foot's width in between my front foot and my back foot. You can have a slight bend in your knees, but it's not necessary to bend it as much as a stance. Hand all the way back. 4. Pow. This is the middle punch. 1. Front stance down block. And a half. Pow. Notice how I used 2 hands and rotated my torso for the middle block. Both moves get some love. Both moves get some twists. Both moves here get body twist. Both moves here get body twist. 2, my high block, just like basic 2. 3, my high block. And 4, hook, a middle punch is the next move. Then I backwards turn, treat it just like basic 1. And then the last 4 moves after the kiap, I chamber, make sure that I keep the back weight on the back knee. And then when we talk about 45 degrees, you all kind of know what that means, or you all definitely know what that means. But a good way to make sure that it happens in practice, right, is to make sure that you basically just don't turn 90. This is what I see a lot of, right? This is another example of me saying what not to do instead of saying what to do. So pow from here, don't just step forward now, as if I'm going down the middle now. I see that for the next move all the time. It's missing the point. It's a corner strike. So I'm going straight in one direction, in this case this way. If this is a square, the middle is to the corner. And so you go to the corner of the room. A great way to practice is to find a room that's a square, stand directly in the center. If possible, do one move facing a wall and do the next move facing a corner. And by that, I mean look at your feet in a back stance. Your feet should make a straight line with your heels, right? Because your heels are in a straight line for a back stance. They're not wide. We talked about this. Well, if they're in a straight line, that straight line should be pointing directly to the corner. It should not be pointing kind of mostly to one wall and not the corner. And it should not be pointing directly to an adjacent 90-degree wall, right? Of course, if you're not standing in a perfectly square room, you don't face exactly the corner, but you face kind of where the corner should be. But just make sure that it's to the corner if you're in a square room completely, right? Good. The last four moves then are those back stance down blocks. I come back the same way I came. I get body rotation. Awesome. Now, Pune on 2. I do want to extend this class. We'll extend it to the normal class time of the 5:30 class, which ends at 6:50, 6:57. So I'll end there. Hopefully I have time. I'm going to do Pune on 2 now, probably Pune on 3, based on how much I talk. Yeah, 2 hours. That would be until 7:30. I could. I don't got nothing. Lord knows I don't have anything to do. But my point of bringing that up is we're just working our way up the forms, and I'm going to keep doing that unless somebody is like, this form, please, right? Like if anybody has any specific questions about a specific form that we haven't already touched on. No, it's 1:30. Yes. Anyway, Pune on 2, right? When I talk about a Pune on 2, we have these double moves. And what even is that, right? Because we're kind of entering, oh, that's how far we've gone so far, 1 hour and 3 minutes. Yeah. What even is the first move of Pune on 2? Because we're kind of in a new stage now. Pune on 1 was a big transition away from basic 1, 2, and 3. It had double moves. It had transitions. A regular class is in an hour and 30 minutes. A regular class is an hour and 20 minutes, right? 4 to 5:20, not to 5:30. 5:30 to 6:50, not to 7. There's that 10-minute period in between, but this is, I digress, not relevant. Yeah, a normal class would end kind of just before 7. I can go, look, I got nothing to do. So anyway. The thing about Pune on 2 is that it's kind of the first form that is fancy. And I have to stop here and I have to just mention that, and that every form after this, you have to like add a little asterisk. Because a kind of Pune on 1, but kind of not really, but every form after Pune on 1 definitely has a danger set to it. A danger of something called senior belt syndrome. A coin I termed, although I'm sure somebody else has made it up before. And the danger is this. You got a lot of nonsense going on with the double moves and the 1, 2, 3s and the switching and the shifting and the yada, yada, yada. And it's all great. And we get to work on it and learn it. But the huge danger is that we ignore the fundamentals, like just how to do your stances or how to look where you're going. So before we move on, just keep that in mind. As you move higher and higher and higher up the kumse, the hyung, the forms, the patterns that we do, make sure that you don't focus so much on 1, 2, 3 that, oh, I'm not even bending as much as I should be in this back stance. Oh, now I'm curving my back because I was thinking about this move and I didn't keep my spine straight. 1,000 things, right? There's an old saying that to the beginner, every move in martial arts is one move, right? You do a down block, a punch, a down block, and it's very mechanical, right? And it's very simple, and that's fine. You're a beginner. You're just learning 1, 2, 3, 4. The intermediate person, by this purple belt, blue belt, kind of red belt stage, it's not one move, it's 1,000 moves. It's this class, right? This is what a front stance is. It is the hip rotation, the toes. This is what a down block is with the hand here, with the pulling and the rotation. This is what 1,000 moves, right? 10,000 moves. There's so many things to think about in one individual movement, from how you look to how you chamber to when you chamber. So much, so much, so much. And to the master, this is how the saying goes. It's all one move, where you're doing all of these things to the best of your ability as one, fully integrated, right? And that's kind of the way that the forms are set up too, right? You have the basics, which are simple because people are new and they're beginners, of course, but also because they're just kind of meant to teach you to do big, simple movements. And you have the intermediate forms, the green, the purple, and blue belt forms, definitely, which are more complicated, right? And they're meant to teach you kind of how to do a lot of things at once. We're integrating double moves in Pinan 1. We're integrating triple, quadruple moves in differing stances and body rotation, especially in Pinan 3. The hip rotation and integration in your moves is key for the form. That's what the form is designed to teach. That's what all these forms are designed to teach, right? It's kind of like we mentioned in the beginning of class, what are you using the form for? Yeah. The red belt forms, they're fancy too, and they're continuing this trend, but they're adding the power. So make sure that you keep what you already know. The back stance, just stay at back stance. I'm gonna try to move a little faster through PR2. What the moves are, then, to me, for PR2 is double hammer fists. A middle block and a high block. The way I like to explain this move, to make sure they're both crossing, is like you're doing a breaststroke when you're swimming. In from the breast and out to both sides. If I was doing that sideways, and then I cross them over, pow, pow. Now I'm coming in. Notice how they're both rotating as if I'm slapping myself on both cheeks, because the palms are facing inward, and from the palms facing inward, I go pow to the palms facing outward, right? That's the rotation that's happening here. When I do the chamber, my palms are facing inward, and there's rotation, pow, rotation. It's not forward like double punches. It's rotation because I'm staying on the back leg. I'm rotating, pow, like basic 3, and I'm, pow, getting power from the blocks. Past the face, guarding the head, 45 degrees, weight on the back leg, 1, pow, is Pinan 2. Now, the way I like to do this, not the way that everybody teaches it, but the way I like to do it is you go down all the way back. I do an inside block, but I leave it forward. And then when I go 3, I pull the hand back. The reason why I do it that way is because I want every move to be functional, right? And so I don't just go 1, 2, and keep the hands hugged in front of my chest. This feels purposeless to me. This punch isn't striking anyone. This block isn't blocking anything. Instead, 1, pow, double block, down, guard, and what this guard is, down, guard is an inside block. It's blocking across the face. A punch comes to my nose, and I chamber, lock that punch that came to my nose, and I do pow, an uppercut, pow, an uppercut that actually goes forward enough to strike. This doesn't do anything, right? This is just me hugging myself. Instead, thank you. Instead, I pow, double block, chamber, block, strike. And the strike, look at how far away. My arm is almost straight. It's an uppercut because an uppercut by definition is the punch that's upside down, where the elbow is behind the knuckles, and that could go straight or it could go up. But it doesn't have to be bent like this. You don't have to do an uppercut to the chin. It doesn't have to be this, where I'm kissing somebody and also punching them, right? That's how close you are when you're doing this. Nah. I'm here, pow. Here's my personal space bubble, pow. And here's pow, you staying on the outside of that with this extension of an actual rotation punch without breaking your back stance. Yes, as long as you don't turn so far that you rotate against your back leg. So if I'm in a back stance right here, my body is facing you, right? Because this is the direction I'm doing my back stance, and the body is sideways. I can turn to here for the uppercut, but if I turn so far that the back leg turns with me, which it has to after a certain point, I turn too far, right? So you can turn this much. You can turn enough to get a little bit of body involved, but do not turn so much that you are losing your stance. The same thing is true, we talk about it in the end of the Pinon form, where you want to punch over your shoulder, but don't turn so far that you lose your horse stance. It's the same thing. You can pow, 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 and I turn like not even 45 degrees. I turn like 10 degrees, right? 10 degrees on a circle. Enough that I got a little power for the punch, pow, but not so much that you'd now say, oh, that's not a back stance. It's that, not that. I'm not facing forward. I'm not even facing 45. Okay. I do the same thing on the other side. Double block, making sure that I'm coming in, pulling out. I like to do the middle blocking hand on the outside. The reason is that's the hand that takes more rotation. And I feel like for an outside block to be on the outside is important. And I feel like for the inside hand to go up, it doesn't get too much. It isn't blocked by my outside hand the way that my outside hand is blocked by my high block. If I reverse that, and instead of going like this with this hand on the outside, I did this, I would feel that now this hand is bumping in and doesn't get a powerful outside block, whereas this gets a very powerful high block. But this way, I still get a very powerful high block and get a very powerful middle block. If you're able to make it work the other way, cool. I think some people do it the other way. I think Master Jeff might do it. I'm not even sure, actually. My point is that the way that I'm saying to do it isn't the only way you can do it. If you can do it the other way and make it work somehow, great. But I do the bottom hand on the outside because it frees up my arms more. So I do the same thing on the other side, bottom hand on the outside, weight on the back leg for a back stance. My knee shouldn't be over here. My knee in a back stance should be above the toes, just like a horse stance, right? Down, guard, uppercut. On both sides, I chamber into this horse stance punch. Yeah. So from here, from the uppercut, I take the inside hand and pull it back. This is the same as when I do a middle punch in any other form, right? So I'm doing a down block in basic one. I pull back, I inhale for the middle punch in the second move. It's the same here, right? Pow, pow, pow. I pull back. I lift the foot up. It's me chambering into a horse stance. Pow. So the weight transfers, right? You don't need to pull back that much because what you're doing is you're shifting from a back stance to a horse stance. So when I'm in a back stance, look at my feet right now. If I'm in a horse stance, my weight is in the middle, my knees are even. If I'm in a back stance, pow. Now my toe is on that line, my heel is back, and my weight is more to this side. I'm doing the beginning of Pinon 2, here, down, guard, uppercut, and from 3, I'm kind of still here, and then I shift forward to the middle into a horse stance, right? What's happening is as I move forward, I transitioned from a back stance to a horse stance. And so by that very nature, I go from here to here. My black belts and people who know Koryo and 7 recognize this concept where you do the back stance, middle block, horse stance, punch. Well, Pinon 2, back stance, uppercut, horse stance, punch. It's the same concept in a different type of move because it's the same transition from one stance to the other stance, right? Okay, yeah. Crazy, right? Oh, yeah, that explains it. So, this is the same as Koryo, as 7, because it's the same stance transition and essentially the same movements, a punch and a punch. Pow, 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 pow. But make sure the weight is in the back leg. Shifts to a horse stance. Good, good, good. For a side kick, ready. Fundamentals. From here, I turn into a side kick ready, but that's not the important part. The important part is, what are all of my body limbs doing? For a basic side kick ready, not the ones that you see in like black belt forms or higher forms or transitions or whatever, but the basic one, my foot is up, it's in a side kick position. So what that means is my toes are back, my knee is kind of turned inwards so that my hip is out. My point is, if I'm facing forward, right, my toes aren't up like I'm doing a front kick. My back is forward and my heel is forward. And I can be to the side, but I don't want to be so far forward that my toes are in front. I'm to the side, predominantly with my backside more forward so that the heel is there. I pull the toes back, I flex the foot, and I can kind of even rotate a little bit the knife edge of my foot, the outside side, the flat side, a little bit more forward and downwards, right? My hands are doing a high block, just like basic 2. Don't over rotate it. Don't put the fist over your head. That is an inefficient leverage point, right? With the fist over your head, what that does is it's a longer lever against which you have less leverage to do something against. For example, if I'm going to use this stick for a high block, and I do this with the black part of the stick over my head, and you try to push down on it, try this, grab a very long stick, hold it up in a high block, and then push against the long edge is very difficult. As you get closer and closer towards your hand, you have more and more leverage because your hand, the corner of the square, is the force where you have more power, right? When you do a high block, the elbow is the corner of your square, just like my hand was when I'm holding the stick. And the further away you get from that, the less leverage and the more of this muscle I have to use. The closer we get to my forearm, right? That's why we always say the ear against the arm. That's because you're trying to get closer and closer and closer. That way, more of the forearm closer to the elbow is blocking, and that's brace. So where I don't need to use arm muscle, but I use forearm to brace. Yeah, I use forearm to brace the block so it is stronger mechanically. Like a front stance is strong because the back leg is straight against the ground. And so you try to push me and I'm not using muscle to push forward. It's just the shape of my leg. In the same way, the high block shouldn't be here where you're trying to use your muscle to push against somebody. You want to use the forearm, right? And when I'm doing a side kick ready, that's the thing that we see every day, right? You see somebody go like this if they're doing it a little bit better, or like this. But it should be pow, a high block, not leaning your head against it, but space, right? High block, down block, the foot in that ready position. If you can, bring them all around at the same time. Now, the foot is in the knee, in the crook of the knee, so my knee is bent, and it's not foot pointing downwards and flat. Instead, your foot is against the angle, the toes are pulled back. In that side kick position, my hands are at the side. Now, for every move, when I do a strike, for every move, when I do the strike with this arm, it comes all the way back, right? Either to the hip or high or whatever, as long as the shoulder isn't up. But for this position, my hand is here. So the hand is forward, this one, the bottom one, so that there's one fist right underneath the space of one fist size right underneath, and the hand isn't all the way back, it's forward. I do the side kick ready, 1, real high block, real basic 1, down block, real basic 2, high block. Look at how this down block hand came across to the shoulder and down blocked. Look at how this high block hand went unbuckled the seatbelt and high blocked. Look at how they both did that. And as I do that, high block, down block, foot in a side kick position, bring them both around, crook in the knee, hands where they need to be, looking where I'm going. And now here's something key. Yeah. Here's key about the side kick. If you leave the knee pointing this way, kind of 45 degrees or straight to the side, and try to do a side kick, you're gonna do a bad side kick, this is not a place where I'm properly chambered to do a side kick. A side kick ready, really should maybe even be here. I mean, that's not the way we do it, but that's because we just need to do an extra step before we kick. And the extra step is this, where you turn your knee. If I'm gonna kick this way, I need to turn my knee the opposite direction. So my heel is pointing forward, pow, and now I can strike. And now I get a nice, clean forward stomp. So I'm looking where I'm going, I do high block, down block, I bring it all around. This is the shape I'm in and that's fine, but turn, stomp. The turn happens with my knee, see? Turn, stomp, look where I'm going, middle block. Good, and we talked about a back stance, middle block. So let's kind of go through the form, hit what we're gonna hit, and then move on from there. Pow, pow, pow. I do the double block in a back stance. Down, inside block, or guard, any kind of block. Uppercut, an actual punch, right? Chamber, shift to that horse stance with the whole bow and arrow chamber. Same thing to the other side, skip. You see how I moved and one foot came to the other foot? One, pow, down, guard, uppercut, chamber, shift the weight into a horse stance. I turn to the side kick ready, and I'll just do it facing this way so that we can all see. One, bring it around, chamber, kick, look, middle block, and we'll pretend like I'm going down the middle this way. One, chamber, keep the weight on the back leg of a back stance. Keep the weight on the back leg of a back stance, and spear hand. Now, what is a spear hand? There's lots of interpretations of what a spear hand is, but I'm actually more concerned about the second hand here, because that's what does not get a lot of love or attention. We always just kind of say it goes underneath your elbow, so if somebody's trying to reach up and break your elbow, you can push down against their hand. And that's true, it is. But I like to think of every move having a purpose in function and in motion. And my favorite interpretation of a spear hand is actually a pressing block. And that's not something that most people will know of who haven't done the black belt forms, but a pressing block is a move that comes down like this. It parries something down. We had it in the Paul Guy forms too. Paul Guy 5 has a pressing block. What a pressing block does is somebody comes in for a punch and you are with your hand or with your forearm in a back stance or whatever, knocking something down with the whole flat side of your arm, right? When you're doing a spear hand, you're doing a pressing block at the same time, right? So say I'm here, pow. A spear hand is a pressing block strike over the opening that I just made, right? So if somebody is gonna punch at me and I'm here, the punch comes in, I pow, parry the punch down, pow, parry the punch down, parry it, and strike over the hand that I just knocked down, right to the solar plexus, just like a basic one punch, except a straight up and down spear, right? So now the hand is given an actual functional purpose. It's not just here with no chamber and I strike over it. Instead, it's coming down. And that all can happen in time with your movement, where I chamber, parry, strike, and land all at the same time, right? So now I'm actually functionally doing something. This works great. Yeah, this is great even in Juju, what is the black belt form, right? Where we come pressing block and spear hand. That's the way you do it in Juju. So the clues are there for anybody who knows the forms, right? Pressing block, spear, but I feel like we shouldn't have to wait until you're a secondary black belt to know how to do a pressing block. The move exists in a purple belt form. And so if you want to do something right, again, you're going to do it right by understanding what it is and not just kind of go from here to there and get no chamber of power, but from here, chamber, pow, forward and strike. Good. We have more back stance with middle blocks, pow, pow, pow. Now, oof, 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 oof. The reverse punch. The reverse punch from Pinon 2. is a beautiful example of the way to do a front stance. I just want to harp back to this for 5 seconds. Don't take that literally, but I want to harp back to this because when we talked about a good front stance way back in the beginning, we talked about it being power pushing from the back leg, right? The back leg pushes, and now it pushes the hips forward and the hips are square, right? Well, reverse punch is kind of an epitome of that. It's kind of one of those ways that you teach front stances to beginners. Another way is that you kind of step backwards into a back stance. And if you want to teach a back stance to somebody so that they have the weight on the back leg, step backwards. And having somebody do a reverse punch in a front stance is a great way to make sure that they actually push forward with the back hip, even if you want them to do a good front stance anyway. In basic one, it's very easy to punch and reach and be in a bad front stance because your body is turned because you're reaching with your front hand punch. When you do a reverse punch, it's much easier to correct this rotation because you're punching with a hand that's the same side as your back leg. Now the hips rotate themselves and you're punching with the back hand. It's a nice little tool. If you find yourself teaching somebody, it can be a good way to figure out the way that you get power from the back leg in a front stance in a reverse punch because it lines up so much easier. That doesn't mean it's more powerful. It doesn't mean that you can't do a good front stance from the front hand. It's just, in my opinion, an easier way to teach somebody who's not understanding the concept because now you're using power to train your body's direction. Okay, so from here, from this last 45-degree middle block in Keinan 2, I'm going to chamber on the way back, going back down the line. So let me face it this way. This is going back down the middle. I reverse punch. Pow with the backhand. Now from here, make sure that just like basic 3, you chamber with both hands. You do the same thing right here, right? I reverse punch, basic 3. I kick, pow with the front kick. Front kicks are some other day. Maybe I do another one of these classes sometime and we talk about kicks and whatever, but no time. Here, punch, basic 3 outside block. I front kick, just make sure the toes are back and the foot is forward, and then land in a front stance. What I want to talk about here is landing. What I want to talk about here is landing, and specifically landing in terms of timing, right? Because if you're going to do any move, it should all happen at the same time. I mentioned earlier that for something like a back stance, it's okay if you're practicing and you go 1 and do it like a wave and let the hand land after, because you're kind of just learning how to integrate the body together like a wave, right? What you're doing is you're learning timing to make it all happen smooth without any kind of jerky interruptions. And if you do this, that was 2 different moves, and it's better to go slow and make it all happen. But as you get better and more practiced and whatnot, you can speed up your hands so that the hands move twice as fast as the feet so that it all ends at the same time, but it's still integrated like a wave, right? So that is the same as, that is a good example of timing, right? It's a good example of how when you do a basic 1 punch, you don't want to step, land, and then punch because the power of the punch is stopped by you stopping your forward motion. The punch is going to be more powerful if you're still moving when you hit, and then you stop at the same time because now you're done both. You're done the step and you're done the punch, but you don't want to step first, then punch after because you stopped your power, right? Well, the same is true because, but the same is true when you do Keinan 2 on the way back. You punch, reverse, kick, you don't want to land, then punch, kick, land, punch, because you're stopping the power. It's the same thing for Keinan 3 later. Here, you want to make sure that you pow, pow, punch, reverse, kick, and then chamber, land from the kick into the next punch, reverse, kick, land with it to where foot stomping, and it's not stomping, but the foot stepping is landing at the same time as your forward movement, right? Pow, kick, punch, freeze. Where are we? So we do a punch, freeze. We do a chi-block. Pow, pow. Good. What is a T-block? Good question. Thank you for asking. There's a lot of different interpretations. I'll just say the way I do a T-block. The way I do a T-block is a back fist to the nose, pow. Is a back fist to the nose and an uppercut to the belly. I've also seen a T-block interpreted as 2 back fists. I've seen it interpreted as different pulling out moves, etc. In terms of the form, later, yeah, we can be done soon. The way that I think of a form, the way that I think of a T-block is just because you need to be thinking of something. And this is the interpretation that I heard from the Wiz, from Master Wizerza, that I thought was applicable. Especially because it chambers correctly for me, right? And so we're punch, freeze, and pow, pow, T-block. They both come from the same side, the way that I was always taught to chamber this move. So I'm here, the hands are both on this side. This hand is chambering for back fist, pow. This hand is chambering for an uppercut. They're both chambering from the same direction, pow. And so I get nice power the way that the form is supposed to be. It's a nice interpretation. Good. We know down block, middle block. We know 45 high block. Down block, middle block. 45 high block. Good, 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 good. So that's Pinan 2 in a nutshell. The more interesting parts about it that I mentioned as a quick recap are pow, making sure the arms are angled correctly. Pull back. Inside block, make sure the punch happens, shifting from back stance to horse stance. When you do your side kick ready, make sure you're doing an actual high block, down block, the foot angled correctly, bring it around, make sure the hand is forward at the hips, turn the knee before you side kick, look before you middle block. You do middle block, middle block, middle block. Think of your spear hand like a pushing, pressing block spear hand. Right? We have more middle block, middle block, middle block, middle blocks. Then we want our reverse punch to have plenty of power, a full 2-hand chamber a la basic 3. Kick, think about how I'm landing. Pow, for the next move. And think about what your T-block is. Pow, how it chambers, is it striking to the nose and solar plexus. That's what I do, specifically to have a target in mind. Pow, pow, right? Down block, middle block, 45-degree high block. Down block, middle, 45-degree high block, and then the key up. Yeah. I think for today, we'll do Pinan 3, and then maybe leave it at that, right? It's already almost 7. I think it's not a big deal if we go over for a minute, finish our last form, and then, you know, this is easy. It's not easy, but clearly I'm a talker. I'm long-winded. I don't have a problem keeping up. So yeah, I'll do more of these. I have the idea of maybe doing one black belt forms, maybe doing one for like the 7 basic kicks, a la front kick, side kick, roundhouse, inside crescent, outside crescent, hook, and axe kick, right? And then different variations. So there could be one just on kicks, one just on black belt forms, one just on red belt forms. You could have a whole one for red belt forms, or I guess I could. But for now, Pinan 3, and we'll leave it at that. Good. So, Pinan 3. There are a couple new. Oh yeah, I guess this video is out there forever. So, Pinan 3. A couple new stances in this form. Yes, there are new stances in this form. If you think you've already gotten them all, you're forgetting the parallel stance with your feet standing together, but not toes like a V, toes parallel, right? This is going to happen a few times in this form. There's also a Tai Chi transition that we'll get to in a minute. So we start Pinan 3 just like basic 3. Exactly. I look where I'm going, I chamber the direction that I'm going to, I keep the weight on the back leg, I rotate, transition, right? I don't push my weight onto the front leg, I have the elbow all the way back, etc. Now, what happens here is we talked about a parallel stance a second ago with the feet parallel. I'm going to step into one of those. I'm here with the outside block, I step into a parallel stance, and put my other hand into a down block. Now, my feet are like that, but let me show you the hands. When I'm facing this way, let's pretend like I just started the form and I stepped into a parallel block, outside down block. My elbows are lined up. You see how this arm is bent and this arm is straight, but the elbows are in a straight line. If I put both arms straight, now you can't even see the backhand, right? Now that I bend the elbow of the backhand, now you can see only past the elbow. That's how it should be. You shouldn't have them separated like this. And the reason is you want to keep your hands in your core. This is true for Wing Chun, this is true for Aikido, this is true for Jiu-Jitsu. You don't want to be reaching your hands way out there. This is the reason why a down block doesn't end over here. This is way past my center. This is way past my point of balance. It's out of control. I want to end here because I'm in control, close to my center. I want to keep my hands here because this is reaching. It's out of balance, it's out of proportion, it's out of control, etc. I keep it here, in line. Now, there's two different interpretations of what these moves are. Both are acceptable, both are equally correct, but they are different. And you need to know what you're doing, because if you're doing one or the other and you're not sure, it's going to be messy. I say that because, look, if you're doing the outside block, down block, and then you do like me, you do a basic 3 and a basic 1, an outside block and a down block, pow, pow. When you do this transition, look at how the top hand comes inward to chamber for a down block, and how the bottom hand goes across to chamber for an outside block, right? What's happening is pow, top hand inward, pow, top hand inward, pow. Top hand comes in for the down block, the bottom hand goes across the outside for a basic 3. That's fine. But if you're going to do the other variation, which is a down block back fist, the top hand still comes across to chamber for a down block, but it's not going inward anymore because this hand isn't coming on the outside. This hand is going more inward, pow, to come straight forward, right? So instead of top hand inward, bottom hand out, we go top hand across, bottom hand inward. Now, whichever one you're going to do, just make sure you practice them. And here's the advanced concept for why this is tricky. Because if you're doing, let me face forward to demonstrate, if you're doing outside block, down block like I do, your hand should be here because you did the block and you passed your face and you knock the hand away, right? So it's off center. Pow, pow, pow. That's how it should be for an outside block, down block. But for a back fist down block, pow, pow, pow. You see how now the top hand is straight in front of the nose because you're striking forward, pow, pow, pow. That's why they're fundamentally different. Yes, they're actually traveling on different directions where this hand, the bottom hand is kind of moving outward like you're going backwards, and the other one is going forward. So they are also fundamentally different directions, but the end position is different. And so if you're doing an outside block by ending in the middle, or you're doing a back fist by ending to the side, that's also another problem, right? So that's a long tangent, but all to say, do either when you want to, but if you do a basic 2, basic 3, or basic down block, outside block, whatever, if you do that, make sure it's ending in the correct place, make sure the elbows are lined up, and make sure it happened in this direction to where the outside block comes on the outside. And if you're gonna do a back fist with a down block, that's also fine, but make sure that it comes up the middle and goes right to the nose, on target, whether it's a block or a strike. And again, if a block is a strike, every strike is a block, but whichever one you're doing, just make sure you know the target and it's not some sloppy something. Good, 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 good. So, pow, outside block, for me, outside block, down block, outside block, down block, look the other way. Now, oof, this is a perfect example of how not to do a back stance. From what I see, a lot of people do all the time. You're standing here in a parallel stance, and then you're gonna step that way into a back stance. And the huge tendency is, oh, I need to step in that direction, so let me move my whole upper torso here, and now I'm very forward into a back stance, right? Wrong. Instead, what I need to do is keep most of my weight back, right? When I did this first move, I didn't, if I'm standing on this line, for example, I didn't step all my weight over here to the middle into a back stance. I kept it back, right? I stayed over here. I did most of my weight back here. I stepped over here to this side of the line to do my block, right? Well, now when I come back the other direction, I'm not going to step all the way over here. Instead, I'm going to keep most of my weight here for the other side. You see how the weight is now on this back leg? Then I step over this direction, pow, pow. But that's not what I see. What I oftentimes see is people go pow, 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 step the weight over here, and then don't do a huge transition. Keep the weight back, then move forward, block, block. Keep the weight back, then step forward, block, block. We talked about what a T-block is. So step forward into a T-block, pop. We talked about what a spear hand is. So step forward, pressing block, spear. The turnaround hammer fist is tricky, and it's tricky because of timing. It's very easy to not do a front stance after the spear, turnaround hammer fist. So here's the sequence. From your T-block, you front stance spear, turn front stance hammer fist to the head, not shoulder height. You can do it to the ribs too if you want to. I like to do it to the jaw. And middle punch, right? Easy enough, but the danger comes in that rotation, right? Let me step back so you can see my front stance. My feet are about as wide as my shoulders, give or take. I'm in a T-block. Let me put this foot on this line to demonstrate a concept, right? What you should do is step forward to a spear hand, and you see how my feet are wide? My left foot, this foot is on this line. This foot is in the middle of the black line. Spear hand, tuck, right? And when I turn hammer fist, I should have this foot, it's hard to see, but let me shimmy back without switching. This foot is still on this line, right? I didn't move it way over here. I kept it here. And I step forward and punch from there. So what's happening is, one, I'm not cheating the front stance like sometimes happens. I'm not going spear, bad front stance, pow, but also I'm not moving too far to the side where people oftentimes T-block, spear straight. Now look, my foot isn't wide in a good front stance, it's on the same line. And then I turn way over here, and now look, I'm off this black line entirely. And I step forward, and well, what happened? I'm off angle, right? I didn't stay straight. Typical for me, right? I joke. So I'm here, foot here. I step forward, I keep this foot in the middle, turn, pow, and step forward. So a trick to make this work better, right? When you do any turn, and I'll talk more about this on a day that we do all kicks, but the way that you do any turn without losing your balance is to turn over a small point. It's the same concept as a back stance. Why do I keep my leg more bent on the backside? So that I get more rotational power, right? Rotational power. That's what we're trying to do with a back stance, having your weight on the back leg. But when you're stepping into a rotation right here, stepping into a rotation, I need rotational power. I step forward and I'm trying to spin. I'm going to spin better and faster if I spin over a small point. So make sure that you don't, let me show sideways. Make a big step and then wonder why. Yeah, don't worry about it. And then you wonder why you're losing control on your front stance after the turn. It's because you stepped very wide with your legs, big, 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 and there wasn't a lot of control there. If instead you bring your feet in and rotate on a small point, pow, then go out, you're in more control, right? So what needs to happen is I'm here in a front stance, I step spear, I'm here in a front stance, I step spear, and this foot, the front one, is my pivot point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this, turn, and move forward from there. That's a broken down version. You want it to all happen smooth in one integrated motion, but a way of practicing it is to do it slow like that. 2, 1, front stance, 2, front stance, and then don't just kind of step big and keep your legs straight and leave them wide and go here, 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 and hope you land in the correct place, which maybe you do, but now I don't have forward front stance power. I don't have this push happening anymore. I have a kind of lateral side something that isn't a front stance now. Instead, forward, pow, pushing in a front stance, perfect. Pow, pivoting so I can push in a front stance. and push in a front stance. Yeah, because what we want to do for a front stance is push forward with the back leg. That is what a front stance is. And I mentioned that when you're doing an advanced form like Pion 2 or Pion 3 and you're doing these fancy concepts like your spear, turn, hammer, fist, punch, we kind of forget about what the stance and the fundamentals actually are. And a front stance at its bare basic forms is a stance that pushes you forward with your back leg. And just because I'm doing some spinny stuff doesn't mean I have to not push forward with the back leg. So T-block, pow, I push forward with the back leg in a T-block. I push forward into a spear, I turn, push. Wow, look at how my knees are coming into that front stance. Don't do this, guys. Do this for your front stance. Keep your knee above your foot in your four stances, in your front stances. Don't turn your toes in. Yeah, keep the toes forward, keep the knee bent. Don't let that happen. Probably because I was going fast through this spin rotation. But yeah, so spear, pow, turn, bring the feet in. For all my dancers out there, it's like your pirouettes. It's like you're in and you're out. The feet come in and out for balance and control. And it's the same as a ballet turn. And then you step forward, bring the foot in, and go out. And that, the same kind of integrated motion like a dance turn, is how you get continuous power for your hammer fist punch, because you're directing it forward. It's like a slingshot. It rotates, rotates, rotates to go forward. If you rotate, 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 and go to the side, it's going to be a sloppy, wide front stance that's not going to go forward. But if you bring it in to go straight, now you're able to direct the power in the direction it's supposed to go and not lose your power because there's power going in the direction it's not supposed to go. Punch. Good. We're going to turn. So let's pretend I can punch this way into a parallel stance. And now our body will follow our eyes, right? So if I'm facing this way for the punch, at the end of the beginning of Pion 3, the first thing I do is turn my eyes. And what that does is my body wants to follow my eyes. And so when I step up, my body will follow and my feet will come together. And you see people do this adjusting thing after. And what that is you're finding your balance. If you lose your balance on the turn, then adjust to find your balance. If you don't lose your balance on the turn, just come there. That's another one of my pet peeves. It's perfectly acceptable to make a big step, boom, boom, and adjust so that you're going now ready to go. But don't adjust for the sake of adjusting if you don't need to adjust, right? Instead, if I just bring up and down and I turn and my body landed in place, what's the adjustment for, right? My feet are together, my hands are at my side, I'm facing forward. So I'm here, look, line up, foot comes down, hands at the side, elbows back, the crescent, elbow strike, hammer fist. Oof, what a section. So I cannot move past this without briefly mentioning what a crescent kick is, because it's necessary. An inside crescent specifically is a kick that moves to the inside. Remember, inside moves go from the outside towards my center line, towards my belly button, and outside moves move from the belly button away towards the outside. So an outside block in basic 3 goes in, away from my belly button. An overhead middle block is an outside block 2, because it goes from my belly button away. Is another example of an outside block. An inside block, like what we're doing in Pion 2, after the outside block, inside block comes back in towards my belly button before the uppercut. So inside moves come in, like an inside chop, outside chop, right? Well, an inside crescent kick starts from the outside and goes in. It doesn't start way over here. Again, we're not cowboys here. We're not coming up and over and bringing it all the way in, because you'll pull your nice little hip flexor, right? This little muscle. We want to use big muscles to do work. Our small stabilizing muscles are great for balance. Our abductors, our adductors on the inside and outside of our legs are great for that. We're standing in a side kick ready. We need our stabilizers. They're important. But for kicks, your quadriceps, this big muscle on the front of the leg, pow. Your hamstrings, this big muscle on the back of the leg, your glutes, your back, your core, we're using the big muscles. And I mention this in such detail because it is important for how you get power from a crescent kick. Big muscles. You're not swinging your leg sideways and straight. You're using the small little groin muscles on the inside side of your leg, the hip flexors. If you do that too hard, or you do that on something too large, you can pull your own groin. And then it's very uncomfortable, and you gotta actually walk like a cowboy after that, because the muscle is not strong enough to absorb heavy impact from kicking. If I'm kicking a big target like one of the black ones, and I do a kick where I swing it around like this, and I do it hard, I'm going to cramp or strain or pull these muscles. So Lord forbid, tear them, right? Probably not, but it could happen. Instead, we want to use big muscles. So I start the inside crescent just like a front snap kick. Pow. Using this big muscle, the quadricep. Pow. And then just like a front snap kick goes out and it bends back in. Pow. When it bends in, it's the hamstring, the glutes, right? These muscles on the backside that are pow, pulling the leg, pow, this way. It's popping, pow, in. And it's big muscles, not this muscle, the one's pulling it in, or this muscle, the groin, but pow, the big muscle, pow, that causes you to lift your heel. That is the hamstring. That is the muscle that I'm using. Pow, to crescent kick. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing a front kick shape, rotating slightly the angle of my foot this way, so that when I flex, it's not actually moving the position of the leg. I'm front kicking, pow, bending the knee, flexing the hamstring, pow, and coming in. I can't do it too slow, I'll try. Hwah. Wow, almost like you're doing an axe kick at a 45-degree angle, right? At a diagonal. What I'm doing, striking with the ball of the foot though, or with the heel, depending on what you're trying to do, is I'm using the big muscle. And I'm not starting from the side. I'm starting straight like a front snap kick. Pow. My balance stays up. I don't turn and I'm in a horse stance out of control. Instead, I'm controlled. I can have my hands here or here. But then I do, pow, a crescent kick, and I can step straight down. And like sometimes that's enough. And for this form, that's enough before you move on. You don't want to have a kick so out of control that you kick and have to land in a bad, you have to fall into a stance. You don't want to fall ever into a stance after you kick in a form. You want to kick, be in control, and from there, land. It's what we said for Pinon 2, right? You kick, pow, and then land with the reverse punch, block, kick, control, land with the reverse punch. It's the same thing here. You know what's coming next, right? The elbow strike. Well, I kick, control, land with the elbow strike in my horse stance. Yeah? That's the concept that we're looking at here. And an intimate understanding with an inside crescent is pretty essential, because otherwise you're throwing your whole leg across, yanking the groin, landing in a horse stance because you have to, and then you're too late, and now you do one of these backwards elbow strikes, and you're not even in a straight horse stance. I didn't have any control of my body. No, instead, I'm controlled, hands at the hips or hands up, crescent kick, but now I'm under control. I chamber like the bow and arrow. I don't gotta go anywhere yet. And when I'm ready, I go forward into a horse stance. Let the power go sideways, land with the forward strike, not a backward strike, hitting with my tricep side, but hitting with my forearm, elbow strike. When I do an elbow strike in a form, it's the same as when I talked about the hammer fist in Pinon 3. It goes to the head or to the ribs, not to the shoulder. And I like to do it to the head because that makes more sense to me in the form. It's the same for me with the elbow strike in Pinon 3. I crescent kick, and I like to pow, elbow strike here to the jaw or to the head. I'm not a fan of this in the form because what are you hitting? Am I hitting chest, bone, sternum? Look, an elbow strike is a powerful move. And if you hit somebody hard enough in the chest, you probably could break it. But the same thing is true for a punch. That doesn't mean you should aim for the hardest part just because you have a harder attack. We still aim for the weak part. We still aim for the jaw, or if you could, for the solar plexus, but I don't like it. So, pow, I like to do this at a slight upward angle, which is the way it's done in like your Nahachis and in your higher black belt form, Tingwan, etc. Elbow strikes go at an upward angle. So I like to do it here too. I think that's how it should be. Elbow strike, upward angle. The hammer fist comes down. This is something that confuses a couple people, so many people, and it's fine. But here's the difference. When you're doing the beginning of this form, T-block, spear hand, turn, hammer fist, this hammer fist is sideways. And it's sideways because it's turning with your rotation into a front stance, right? It makes sense to do it sideways because you're turning this way. Perfect, right? Here, I did an elbow strike, dead stop, and now I have to go the other direction. This isn't any more powerful than this at this point because I turned this way into an elbow strike and now I'm going the other way into a hammer fist. It's not adding anything extra. So instead, I go straight down like the hammer fist you do when you're a white belt breaking your first form. Great. So the whole pattern again, I'll do it facing this way once and I'll do it facing that way once. Is crescent kick to the front, pow. Chamber, land in the elbow strike, hammer fist. I had an extra chamber there, but I'm not going to fuss about that right now. And ready. Crescent kick, control, chamber, land in the elbow strike, hammer fist, just like the hammer fist in Pinon 1, by the way, is that kind of a 45-degree, slightly bent, but not as much as an outside block. And ready. Crescent kick, hammer fist, freeze. Before I look at the next section, I'll do it one more time facing this way. Crescent kick, look at how my belly button is still facing you. A chamber, belly button still facing you. Horse stance, now I'm sideways. Hammer fist, ready. Crescent kick, chamber, horse stance, nice angle, hammer fist, ready. Crescent kick, elbow strike, the body was here. Elbow strike, hammer fist, freeze. So this is one of those things that I do because I convinced myself to do it, but not something that I was ever taught. So when you talk about the second chamber there, it's because when I do Pinon 1, and this is a move that I compared it to a couple seconds ago, right? The way that it should be done and kind of what the way that we talk about a down block hammer fist in Pinon 1 is this. You chamber down block here, and when you do a proper hammer fist in Pinon 1, it's not just this hand going like that, because now this hand is just sitting here at the hip, right? When you do it in Pinon 1, 2 hands chamber, like you're doing basic 3, this other hand comes over. What that does is it kind of cross pauses, cross rotates, pow, into your hammer fist. So I added it. It's not the way that's normally done in the school, but it is adding more power and control and stability to the move. So it's not just one arm and one shoulder. I don't like the idea of doing a one-handed full rotational hammer fist in Pinon 1. We need that other hand to control the body, just like we need it to add and control power for the punch in Pinon 1. And I like to do things the same way across the board. So when I do Pinon 3, I could go like this, elbow strike, hammer fist, but that to me feels not like Taekwondo. It feels like using just my arm, pow, for a hammer fist with limited power. And you could rotate your body after this elbow strike, pow, to get body power for the hammer fist. But that feels then like it doesn't make sense if I'm doing all this rotation without using my other arm. Like, why bother adding extra twisting if you're not going to just do it right? So for me, I crescent kick, elbow strike using 2 hands for the elbow strike, pow. And then I want this body rotation, pow, to help pow this hammer fist, right? And so to get this body rotation to be complete and controlled, I pull this other hand around, pow, and do it like that, pow. The same way I do it in Pinon 1. I'm using both hands for power and for control. It's not something you have to do in your form when you practice it. But if you like to do everything with 2 hands, like I think it's maybe the more correct way to do it martially, but for the form, it's fine. Kind of like how in Pinon 2, we say it's okay to go punch, outside block with one arm, kick, punch, outside block with one arm. But also, while it's okay to do as a green belt, purple belt, I also think that if you're a red belt or black belt, you probably should be doing Pion 2 like this, using both hands. In the same way, we talk about Pion 1, the down block, middle block. This is fine, and it's kind of how we teach it to like kids and orange belts who are very young. For anybody who can understand the body, we tell them down block, use this other hand like basic 3 and get power from 2 hands in the body rotation for the middle block. That's kind of where I'm coming from when I say that I use both hands for the hammer strike. For the hammer fist down the middle, Pion 3. I want both hands to control and add power to the rotation for the hammer fist. I like every move to have its own chamber, rotation, and power. So the answer is no, you don't have to, but I do think it's functionally more efficient and better. Cool. So from here, you actually hit your face? I did, but let me go back and say that it is exactly the same as Pion 1, right? If you remember the detailed explanation I gave for that, it's down block, turn the body away from it, right? As the body turns, when I turn back, the elbow extends first, then the hand comes after. I think your problem might be that you're extending it all as one solid unit, and your arm, as it pulls, your elbow isn't flexing or extending. Your arm is moving across and whacking you across the face, right? Yes, exactly, right? You're trying to move your arm as one solid cohesive unit instead of allowing it like a hammer fist when you do it as a white belt, right? You don't just go like this. You bend it, rotate the shoulders, flex, you rotate the torso, move the shoulder, move the elbow, right? 1, 2, 3. It's all happening together, but it's not this. There's no power there. It's the same coming from the other direction. It's not this. It's 1, 2, 3. That's key. The actual pow, elbow strike, and in this case, I don't mean the forward elbow strike from Pion 3. I mean this movement of the elbow to start the hammer fist. You don't actually have to do an elbow strike. So when I'm doing this in Pion 3, I crescent kick, elbow strike this way, pow, chamber with this hand so the elbow comes back, see? 1, 2. Make sense? So kick, and that's where I put the other hand in. When I chamber, pull the elbow, both hands are pulling at the same time, like I'm doing basic 3. Wham, wham, except instead of pulling across and outside, it's pulling up like I'm doing an elbow strike on the other side. I just elbow strike here, and now it's like I'm going to the other side, right? I did pow, it's like I'm getting both sides of the cheeks. One cheek, other cheek, one cheek, other cheek. And as I do that, pow, one cheek, other cheek, bam, hammer fist. That's the finishing point of it, right? That's something you can practice. Yeah, that's something you can practice on your own. So pow, 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 into a front stance middle punch. Now, from here, the last thing I'll end with is the last part of this form. The Tai Chi section. In Tai Chi, when you move quick, brief into Tai Chi, you just move the foot first, then the body after. What that means is I'm here, the body stays stationary, the foot moves first, the body moves after. And that's true in general for most walking in Tai Chi. So when I'm here for this last move, and I'm here, right, with this hand, yeah. Same hand as same foot, the feet come together, the body is over both feet, the foot moves out by itself, the body splits the difference. In full motion, I like to exhale with the movement of the torso. Good. From here, leave the hands, pow, so they move. And we talk about timing. You want the hands to move twice as fast as the feet so that you don't 1, 2, so that you land at the same time, but you still want to leave the hands back and just move them quickly. What you don't want to do for a basic 1 punch, for example, is move it all at the same time, 1, and not get any power. You want to 1, 2, 3, 4. You see how the leg moved? 1, 2, 3, 4. The leg moved 1, 2, 3, and 4. That was all the leg. If I do a punch, 1, 2, 3, 4. The punch waited for 1, 2, and 3, and the punch started and finished at 4. It was that fast, right? Even though the stance went 1, 2, 3, 4, the hands waited 1, 2, 3, 4, but they ended at the same time, like a doll, I guess. So the same thing is true for basically every move. That's the timing concept that I didn't harp too much on. With more, yeah. So I'm doing an outside block in basic 3, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4. The stance is going, but then the hands still end at the exact same time. And that is tricky to do here for this last section of Pion 3, because we go, the hands need to wait, and they need to wait with power. So I'm here, let me face backwards so you can see when I'm done. My left hand is punching, or whichever side you're looking at. 1, 2, 3. You see how the hands are still here? 1, 2, 3. And this would be 4 actually when the stance is done. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. The ending of the stance and the hands move at the last second. That's what I mean by a chamber. The hands stay here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The hands waited. 1, 2, 3. That's building up the chamber. That's the inhale before the exhale, which is the strike. Pop. I breathe in 1, 2, 3, even as I'm moving, and I quick breathe out as I strike. If I'm doing basic 1. The actual powerful short breath is my strike, yeah? So, Pion 3, quick recap. I keep the weight on the back leg for the outside block. I bring the feet together now, whether I'm doing an outside block down block or a back fist down block, make sure that they're correct, going across, or down the middle. Same thing other side, keep the weight back, bring it up, do what you're doing. T-block, as I do the spear hand, turn around hammer fist, make sure that you keep it wide, pivot, keep it wide, hammer fist to the head, middle punch. Look with your eyes, land together, adjust if you need to, don't adjust if you don't need to. For the crescent kick, it's not a big movement from the hip flexor. It comes straight up like a front kick, flexes with the hamstring. I'm under control. I'm under control, land, horse stance, hammer fist, ready? We talked about how to do the hammer fist with body rotation with both hands if you're interested, with the elbow coming first and the arm extending. Pow, pow. I end with the punch, making sure that every move, not just this last one, but every move has a chamber, weight, and a control. Ouch. Woof. Well, I had a plan of going through all the forms if I could, but we made it through Pion 3. I talked for a long time, out of voice, out of breath. If there are any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace, because I feel like I've been talking for 2 hours and 8 minutes without stopping. If there are questions, you know me. Good. So thank you everyone for watching. Yeah. I think maybe we'll do one some other day on just the red belt forms. Since this exists out there on the internet, I feel like we don't need to do a class on the same thing again. So this one can exist. We'll do one on just the red belt forms. We'll do one on just like certain, you're tired. What do you think about me? This shirt is, you don't want to know. So we'll do one on just the red belt forms, which I think is We'll do one on just the black belt forms, or even just certain black belt forms, because there is so much in them in terms of style and flow, etc. And I do want to do one on just kicks, like literally nothing else, like how to do a front kick, roundhouse, side kick, inside crescent, outside crescent, axe kick, and hook kick. And of course, that includes all kinds of variations, like how to do turning versions, front leg versus back leg, different types of footwork while kicking, different types of footwork while not, etc. Right? So there's plenty of stuff to talk about in an all kicking class too. But since this already exists, this is basic 1 to Peon 3. We'll do a red belt 1, we'll do a black belt 1, we'll do a kicking 1. I don't know, maybe even a sparring footwork 1. Lord knows I could talk for the whole time, but are people willing to watch for the whole time? Okay, so yeah. You're welcome, Cloudy. Yeah, so if that's all, if nobody else has anything relating to the topics and the scope of what we've talked about, basic 1 to Peon 3, if there's nothing else, I will end this thing. Thank you for indulging me, all 8 of us. We went up and down from 8 throughout the time, but yeah, thank you for indulging me. Good class. If you like the new hair, I got a new gel. It works. It looked better yesterday, but I do like the curls. Anyway, have a good one. You know what? Thank you, Miguel. And I'm signing off now. Yeah. Thank you all.